Well, hey there and welcome back to HEIMLER's History. Now, I've been going through Unit 5 of the AP Government Curriculum, and in this video it's time to talk about interest groups and their influence on public policy. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked iron triangle style, well then let's get to it. So here's what we're trying to do in this video. Explain the benefits and potential problems of interest group influence on elections and policy making. And secondly, explain how variation in types and resources of interest groups affects their ability to influence elections and policy making. So we talked about interest groups, those many months ago in Unit 2. So I reckon a definition is in order because, let's be honest, you probably forgot by now what they are. An interest group is a group of people who gather around a policy issue in order to persuade policymakers to pass legislation favorable to the group. And there's an interest group for dang near everything. There's the NRA for people who are excited about guns. There's the NAACP for people who want to fight for black rights. There's PETA for people who want to fight for animal rights. And there are more generalized groups like the AARP, which advocates for the varied interests of retired people. And I can go on and on, but the point is these are usually very narrow interests. Not necessarily, but a lot of times they are very narrow in their interests. And now let's talk about the four major reasons that interest groups exist. First, interest groups educate voters and office holders on the interest group's chosen issue. If you could take all the individual interests Americans care about and put them on a scale, it would weigh a metric buttload, although word on the street it is rapidly approaching 2 metric buttloads. The point is there are way more issues that people care about than the voting population or elected officials could possibly research and develop expertise on. But do you know who can become experts on those individual issues? I hope you said interest groups because that's, literally what this whole video is about. Yes, it's interest groups. One of their main jobs is to educate. Like, for example, did you know that there's an interest group for balloon enthusiasts? Oh yes, there is. In fact, in 2012, the Balloon Council spent $60,000 to educate the public on the helium crisis in America. Now, part of that money was spent to educate the public, and the other part was spent to do the next thing I want to tell you about. The second thing interest groups do is engage in lobbying, which just means that they hold meetings with policymakers to try to influence them to pass legislation in their favor. And just for poops and giggles, let's keep talking about the balloon lobby because, it makes me happy. After the helium crisis passed, I know you think I'm making this up. This is real, okay? This is real. After the helium crisis passed, balloon sellers were filling their balloons to their heart's content, and a few states started passing anti-balloon laws. These are mainly environmental regulations. Like, in case you didn't know, when a balloon gets released into the sky, it doesn't go to heaven to adorn the throne of God, world without end. No, they usually end up in the ocean. And a few years ago, environmentalists started finding birds tangled up in balloon strings and dead whales with balloon trash in their stomach. And so states started passing anti-balloon laws. Well, the Balloon Council, furious at this example of gross government overreach, lobbied state legislatures hard, and you know what? They were successful. There are only 5 states now that have anti-balloon laws on the books thanks to the tireless lobbying efforts of the balloon lobby. Anyway, because many interest groups form around a single issue, these lobbyists are often policy experts who can help policymakers understand the impact of certain legislation. Okay, so let's leave the Balloon Council behind and talk about the third thing interest groups do, and that is draft legislation. So because interest groups are experts in their areas, many of them hire staff to draft policy proposals for legislators to consider. Like, if you want a bill that upholds the rights of balloon enthusiasts everywhere, here's what it would look like. Oh, I said I would stop, but it is just too tasty. It is too tasty. There is a balloon lobby. All right, maybe a better known interest group like the National Rifle Association is a better example. Their policy experts and staffers could draft a bill protecting gun rights and present it to sympathetic legislators in hopes that they will introduce it and have it passed. Okay, the fourth thing interest groups do is to mobilize their members to apply pressure on and work with legislators and government agencies. So the interest group might ask its members to email their representatives when a bill comes up for a vote, or maybe they plan a demonstration of some kind in order to get some media attention. Okay, now that we've seen what interest groups are and what they aim to do, let's look at one of the major ways that they do their work. If you remember back to Unit 2, I told you that interest groups were one point on what's known as an iron triangle. This is a term to describe the strong, mutually beneficial relationship between interest groups, congressional committees, and government agencies. Members of congressional committees are especially helped by interest groups who both provide them with policy information and provide no small of campaign donations if the representative is sympathetic to the group's goals. And interest groups can also become part of issue networks, which is when many different interest groups and even entities outside of interest groups come together to achieve a short-term policy goal. For example, a couple of years ago, there was a big push from a lot of different groups that had come together into an informal issue network to oppose government subsidies of tobacco farmers. There have been policies granting tobacco farmers federal funds since the 1930s, and over the last decade, there was a growing movement to shut that down. Okay, so those are issue networks. Now let's turn the corner and talk about the factors that could either hinder or help an interest group achieve its goals. First, an interest group's activity can be influenced by inequality of political and economic resources. Because one of the most significant things an interest group can do for policymakers is to help fund their campaigns means, then policymakers are much more incentivized to take meetings with the well-funded interest groups. For example, big groups like the NRA and the AARP have buttloads of scratch, and so everyone wants to hear from them. The same reality also has an effect on the second factor influencing the efficacy of interest groups, namely unequal access to decision makers. Again, the interest groups with small amounts of funding and smaller memberships will have a harder time bending the ear of a policymaker. The third factor influencing how well interest groups can do their jobs is the free rider problem. This is when a larger group benefits from the efforts of the interest group than are members of the group. Like, the members are paying the bills, but their proposed legislation might help a lot more people than those in the group. Think about the AARP again, which lobbies on behalf of retired persons. Now, clearly not every retired person in America is a member of that group, but if the AARP is successful in lobbying and getting favorable legislation passed, then who benefits from all that? It's all retired people. So there are a lot more people benefiting from that legislation than the ones who actually did the work of getting it passed, and that is the free rider problem. Okay, thanks for watching. Click right here to grab a review packet, which is going to help you get an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May. And if this video helped you and you want me to keep making them, then by all means subscribe and I shall oblige. HEIMLER out.